Hey guys, Martial Arts Militia here. My name is Matthew. In today's video is going to be a range report on the Glock 19 Gen 5 MOS with a HoloSun solar charging system. Now I got the Glock 19 Gen 5 MOS because I really wanted to test out the optics system. I pretty much shot irons my whole life. That's the only thing my dad would ever teach me on. And so I never used any other sighting system until the Bodyguard 380 with the Crimson Trace laser, which I thought was fantastic. When you have to line up the front and the rear sight all the time with the blurry front sight, you know, it is pretty annoying. But you know, with the laser, you literally just line up the laser. At 7 yards, of course, the accuracy changes if you know, wherever you shoot it at, you set it at. But if you have to shoot really far away, then it's going to change. Really close, it changes too. I assume it's the same here for the optic. But going to the optic, of course, I need a gun that has its cut for an optic system like this. And the only options that I knew of would, of course, be the Glock 19 Gen 5 MOS, but also Smith & Wesson's M&P 2.0 metal is also cut for optics as well. And I've had experience with both guns. You know, I have an M&P 2.0 polymer, so I've shot that before. I've had a Glock 19 Gen 5 regular, not MOS like this, and I should still have it, but my friend, he wanted something to protect himself, and I was like, okay, we'll have that. And then one day he just sold it. He just sold it, so never paid for it, but he sold it. Pays debts or something. I also shot a Glock 26 Gen 4. That one was pretty good, but I sold it because at the time I thought I made all my guns standardized to subcompact, but I realized it was unnecessarily too small and I didn't need that. So then I went back up to compact, so that's why I ended up selling the Glock 26 Gen 4. So I've used both platforms, and when you look at the M&P 2.0 compact, it is pretty much exactly the same size as the Glock 19 Gen 5. I mean, it's, you know, it's almost the same thing. The only big difference is that with the Glocks, whether you get a Gen 4 or Gen 5, it's actually ambidextrous all the way. You know, you can make the mag release switch to left hand, but like that, you know, or right-handed. M&P, you can also do that. I changed it to left-hand side. And of course, the Glock has an ambi-slide release. Now, when it comes to the M&P Polymer 2.0, it does have a slide release here on the right side, but there's a piece of metal that goes right here, and that's what that is. But that piece of metal, it doesn't really allow you to use the slide lock on the right hand side. And the reason for that was because the M&P 1.0s, they had a tendency to auto forward. And what that means is that when you put the gun in, when the gun's locked back, when you reloaded, it would make the gun shoot forward as if it was ready to auto load for you already. And some people like that, some people did not, and I guess Smith & Wesson decided to answer that by putting in this piece of metal on the left side, and that it makes it so you basically can't use the right side to the slide release. Now, as you notice, it's not in my gun, so to answer your question, yes, I can use the right hand. If you take that out, you can now use it ambidextrous, I would say. So the gun is basically now fully ambidextrous. Now, I will say that with the M&P 2.0 metal, which I don't have, but I did handle it at Shields, it's already ambidextrous, and it doesn't have a cutout for this. So clearly, when Smith & Wesson was kind of careful to say that it's not a slide release, it's a slide lock, they don't care anymore. They don't care anymore, and now it's fully ambidextrous. I used it at Shields, and it's very good. I'd say the trigger is also really good on M&P 2.0 metal. The trigger on the polymer is what I would call bad, and by bad I would basically say it's the same as Glock's trigger. You know, it's just bad. So if you wanted a better trigger, I'd go with M&P 2.0 metal. And with the M&P 2.0 polymer, you'll notice that it's not cut for an optic here, but the M&P 2.0 metal is. So if you wanted to have the optic on the M&P 2.0, you have to go metal. Unless you want to have this sent in and cut, and of course you could do that. But I'm just saying, if you want everything right away at the beginning, you'd have to buy the M&P 2.0 metal right away. Now the optic on here is a hollow sun. It's a solar charging system. That means it uses the light, and that's how it powers itself. I think for like 12,000 hours, so however many years that is. And so there's no battery. It's a very strong, I believe it's an aluminum metal. You know, it's a pretty good, I think for me, as somebody who's never used it, I think it's a good start. You know, not having to think about different batteries and things like that, just to have something that takes care of itself, and I'll see if I like it or if I hate it, of course. Too early to tell, but I mean, it's there. And Hollow Sun does make it for the Glock 19, and they also make it for the M&P 2.0. So, you know, I think it's Hollow Sun MP is for this guy, and then it's MOS for the Glock 19. Now, some differences between these two guns, at least. The Glock 19, of course, has a flared magwell to make easier reloads. The M&P polymer does not, and I assume the metal also does not. I didn't see some of the pictures. The grip texture I find for the M&P polymer is way too aggressive. It's too strong, too annoying. And they did alleviate that in the 2.0 metal by, I think, removing this part. So this part, there's no texture, so it's not as, you know, annoying as it is on the regular 1.0. I talked about the trigger, not cut for optic. So the auto forward, you know, as people say, the 1.0 would auto forward pretty often. I've never noticed that with this one. I think even with this metal piece in here, it's supposed to stop that. I think it did auto forward maybe like in a few times in a blue moon, so it didn't really fix the situation. And with M&P 2.0 metal, where they don't even have this cutout, I would imagine that the auto forward is either still existing there or they fixed it. So I can't speak on whether that has occurred or not. But that was something that Smith was very, you know, very careful about not telling people about. Let's see. And of course the M&P metal is heavier than the Glock. It's because it's an aluminum frame, it's like 9 ounces heavier. And I did notice that the gun was quite hefty. It was quite hefty when I was at Shield. So I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, some people might, but you know, I just think of it as something that you can train with. Now, of course, the Glocks have their back straps, which I never use because it's honestly way too annoying and difficult to use it. So I just shoot it like this, honestly. With the Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 polymer, and I'm sure the metal has it too, it's very easy to change out these grip swells, these palm swells. It's so easy. There's this at the under end. If you just turn this, you can take this out as I say that, and then this comes off. And so this is the small, and you know, you get ones for medium, you get a medium large, and then of course you get a large, you know, and it's very easy. You know, you slip it into here, there's a pocket at the top. Once again, you just line it up here, lock them in. It's so easy. So if you want to try out the different palm swells on the M&P polymer, and I'm sure the 2.0, very, very easy to do. So with that being said, what did I decide on? Well, as I said, I decided on the Glock 19. And the reasons why was that the M&P is not necessarily ambi dedicated. You know, again, I feel like the M&P 2.0 metal is dedicated, much better than the polymer or the 1.0. But at the same time, you know, I think with them going back and forth on the auto forward, just kind of shows that Smith wasn't sure why it was doing that. They didn't know how to fix it, you know. So it wasn't built from the ground up as ambi dedicated, whereas the Glock 19 Gen 4 and Gen 5 were built from the ground up. Like, they knew they wanted this to be an ambidextrous gun. And when I say that, I think only Gen 4 was just the mag release, you could switch to the other side, but only Gen 5 had the slide release. I think. I'm not 100% sure. I think Gen 4 was only making it left hand mag release, and Gen 5 is actually ambu dedicated, so mag release and slide release. Another thing was that since the M&P could auto forward, that is a unpredictability factor. Now, fighting in martial arts is already unpredictable. The last thing I want is my martial art to be unpredictable, you know? Like, imagine if a gun like fired without pulling the trigger. That'd be a really bad unpredictability factor. Now, the gun auto forwarding is not that bad, it's not that big of a deal, but it's still something that I can't know for sure will or will not happen without my control. And when I say that as a con, it's really not enough of a con to be a con, but I'm just saying that it is something that slightly weighed in my decision. Now, of course, the Glock has a flared mag well, and that's nice. You know, I think when I started my training, I didn't think it was a big deal, and it probably isn't, but once again, I like it, so it's a plus that I don't subtract anything for having. And then the grip texture on the Glock is not as aggressive as well. I think the first time I shot this gun, the grip texture was the one thing that was really putting me off. Now, granted, some guys do shave this off to make it more bearable, and that's fine. If you like the gun, you can do that, you know, but you know, as something that's stock, it's just, I really don't like that aggressive grip texture. And then, of course, the Glock is going to be a little bit cheaper with aftermarket support, better aftermarket support because it's been around longer. I was looking at some prices, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think the M&P polymer would be $450 maybe. This one was $600, and then I think the M&P 2.0 metal, which would be comparable to this, almost $700 or $750. So you're paying quite a bit more for the Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 metal, and with the points that I mentioned, it just didn't seem like the most reasonable buy for me at that time. So as mentioned, I did purchase the Glock 19 Gen 5 MOS at Shields, and then the representative also sighted it in for me. He had a really neat kind of laser bore sighting device that he used to line up the green laser. It's a green laser on the Holosun to line up co-witness with the iron sights, or plastic sights, I guess, right? Glock uses plastic sights. He lined it up pretty well. He asked me to check, but I kind of went with his vision instead, and the reason why is that he is a normal guy. He's right-handed and he's right eye dominant, but I'm crisscross. I'm left-hand dominant, right eye dominant. And so after a while, we kind of just looked at it back and forth, and I was like, you know, I think I'm giving you wrong readings because my eye doesn't match my hand. Let's just go with yours. So I went with his eyes matching his hands, and I left him to sight it the way that he did. And that was it. Call it easy. Now, as far as the range goes, I had to wait for a time to go to the range. I work pretty normal hours, but the work is just too much. I have 55 clients, and you know, it's pretty normal for me to have an appointment every hour, and there's 8 hours in a day, a work day, you know, obviously. So I'm seeing everybody every hour, and so when I have to do my reports, I don't get to do it on that day. I have to wait the next day, go into work early, about 6:45 a.m., start working on yesterday's stuff before I start today's work. And then when I get done with today's work, I gotta wait till tomorrow, wake up 6:45 and do yesterday's work. Okay, so I mean, it is normal, you know, 40 hours a week. It's just there's too much work, and so I don't have a lot of time to dedicate to myself. On the flip side, I have way too much PTO. The limit is 144 hours per month for my service of 2 years, and I'm already at the limit. And my company will not pay it out. So if I don't use it, I lose it. I did take a day off, and it was the worst day of my life. I just had nothing to do, and it was dreadful. So basically what I did this time was I took a half day off. So I still worked 4 hours, so I'm not screwed trying to catch up to, you know, my work. I don't understand how people take a vacation and come back and it's like, I don't even want to look at this, you know? So I thought, let me work 4 hours, then I'll go home, and then I'll go to the range. So that's what happened this time. For the range, I took 50 rounds of Fiocchi Range Dynamics, 50 rounds of Blazer Brass, and 200 rounds of Magtech. They're all 9mm 115 grains. Now, I didn't intend to use the Fiocchi Range Dynamic or the Blazer Brass as like my target practice ammunition. It was just extra that I had at a good price. So that's really just ammo burn down, just burn those. But the MagTech, I am planning to use that as my main sort of ammunition for, you know, targeting, fighting, right? They have a hollow point version as well. And then I had just the regular magazines for the Glock 19 Gen 5. You know, you get 3 15 round magazines. But I also had 2 17 round magazines, OEM, original, from probably my younger days when I thought I should get some. So a lot of magazines I have, and I had them preloaded as well. I went through, you know, in that order: Fiocchi, Blazer, Tech. And of course I shot at 7 yards, 21 feet, average mean distance of a lethal confrontation. Now I put 3 separate shoot and C's on the target here. And honestly, I should have placed them differently because I placed them in the middle, so then it got folded. So I won't do that again. I'll just put them in different places. Now, with going through some of the rounds on the Glock 19 Gen 5, I did notice there was quite a few failures to feed. Very often, actually, you know, almost every 2 to 3 shots in the beginning, but then after that it just sort of chilled out, and I don't think it did it again. It also didn't want to lock back, you know, so after you take your last shot, you know that the gun has to, that's the wrong magazine. You take your last shot, the gun locks back like that. Mine didn't a lot of the times. I didn't go back and count, but you'll see in the range footage, it just didn't do it that often. But honestly, the slide got so hot that, I mean, I was better off just trying to slingshot it instead. Now, for our targets, I have on the top, I'll give you a close-up here, that's the first target. I put 50 rounds of Fiocchi Range Dynamics. Now, I would say this is very bad in the sense that it's lower right, but I also think that it's because I hadn't been to the range for like a month. And so, you know, it just takes time to readjust. And then also, like, I tended to pull, you know, like I pulled the trigger, and I think it's because as soon as that laser hit that bullseye, I just wanted to pull, you know. So that, I think, is causing that jerky reaction to have a lot of those shots go lower right. I also found it difficult to slow down firing because as soon as I saw that light line up with the bullseye, I just wanted to pull, you know. So I'm sure I felt something like that with the Smith & Wesson Bodyguard, where, you know, when the laser hit the bullseye, I just wanted to pull right away, you know. So that's definitely something I have to train out of me. Now for the second target, this one here, this one would have been the 50 Blazer Brass. With these rounds, I think I was just getting it, you know. I was just starting to understand, slow down a little bit more, you know, and chilling out a little bit more, so that's why it's not all lower right. Could be the ammo, but it's certainly a little bit more all over the place. Now the third target down here, I'll give you a close-up of that. Again, it just looks good because it has literally 4 times the ammo through it than, you know, Fiocchi and Blazer. But still, at this point, I would say that I had much more focus. I was much more controlled. I'm, you know, thinking things through. I began to stage the trigger, you know, because I would always pull from like all the way from the trigger reset rather than just kind of pull back a little bit and to the point where it breaks. And then I'm thinking maybe my accuracy increased a little bit. So I would say that I had basically settled in by the third target, and I had a much better idea of what I was doing. Now, one thing I noticed with the Glock 19 Gen 5 now that I didn't notice in the past is that I cannot point with my finger, which is what I do with most other guns, every other gun. You know, it's really hard to find to line up the sights and to find the green dot. But I read some time ago that if you aim with your thumb, and that may have been the way that Glock designed it, if you aim with your thumb, it's actually very easy to find the laser, and the sights line up very well. And I think you'll see in the range footage that my firing rate increased a lot better, a lot more. Not crazy like the first 50 rounds, but like it increased more as in I got a good shot, and then I'm already ready for the sight picture. And in the early shots, you'll see that I shoot, and then I'm like trying to readjust to find the sight. But by following the thumb after every shot, the sight, the sight picture just lined up more naturally for me. So that's something that I think you'll have to consider, is that if you want to shoot Glocks and you have to point with your thumb, that does seem to be a much more distinct martial art than anybody else. So it's not going to transfer to any other martial art. If you point with your thumb, which I do with most other guns, they transfer to every art, right? But this one's not, right? I have to remember it's a Glock. I have to treat it differently. Kind of like the Walter VPK when it's slide bit me, and there's a way to avoid that by particularly holding it. It's like that, And that's up to you if you want to dedicate your time for that, and that's fine. But if you want to streamline your martial arts, then, well, maybe you'll have to give that further consideration. But yes, by pointing with the thumb with the Glock 19 Gen 5 MOS, I got a much better firing rate and a much better sight picture acquisition. Almost too good, I would say. As I mentioned, by staging the trigger, I felt like I was much more in the zone. So what I mean by that is, like, when I would pull in the first few shots, I'd be all the way back here, and then I'd pull back, right? And then, so when I'm coming back from recoil, I have to pull all the way back. But I figured out later on, I was like, okay, so after I come back, right, I would just come back here and be like, okay, I can go now. And then of course, as I mentioned, I did feel like it was more accurate. Couldn't tell because there's a gigantic hole in the target, but it felt like it was more accurate. Now, I also have to give credit to the Up-Lula. Give me a moment as I find that and be back. Just kidding, guys, it was right here. The Up-Lula, this guy right here. So this is fantastic. I was only able to get through 300 rounds because of this. I preloaded all the magazines when I went to the range, and I only had to preload all of it twice, maybe, or 3 times. And I got through all 300 rounds in 30 minutes. Now, granted, it was more like 31 minutes, but our range is not that stingy. Of course, I wouldn't push it past 35 minutes, but I mean, like, 31, 32 is not that big of a deal, just out of simple respect. But yes, the Up-Lula was the only reason I was able to get so many rounds downrange. So if you ever think, like, do you need something like this? Well, if your range has a timer, half hour, stuff like that, then yes, I think that you should definitely get this so you can get more range time. So most of your time is focused on actual training and not just reloading magazines. Oh, well, you will reload magazines, but much faster anyways. Well, that's all I have to say about the Glock 19 Gen 5 MOS. It was a good time. I enjoyed it. As far as the M&P 2.0 metal, I am more curious about it, but I don't know if it's worth a purchase just to find out, especially when it's a higher price to start with. But I hope my ramblings in this video helps you guys with any questions you might have about the M&P, polymer, and metal based on what I experienced when I was at Shields. If you have any questions, you just let me know, and hopefully that helped you if you were ever deciding between the two or wanted to know a little more specifics about them, which of course you can ask down in the comments section below. Other than that, you guys have a great day. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll roll the range footage for you here right now.
save your breath?
No, I don't.
You mind if I pick it up?
No, you're good. You're welcome.
You learned martial arts! Martial arts, good!